We'll find out soon. In the Week 11 edition of the Million Dollar Mission, I'm your host, Moose, at CFB_Moose on Twitter, from OccupyFantasy.com, at OccupyFantasy on Twitter. And I should probably change your header because you are not PC lead. You are
No.
Brian Jester, FF, co-founder of Occupy Fantasy. What's going on, man? How you doing tonight?
What's up, Moose? Haven't talked to you in like 2 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. We're gonna be going over did Brian, as the title suggests, did Brian win the million this week? Looking at his 150 NFL DFS lineups on DraftKings and FanDuel. Trash emoji, trash emoji, trash emoji.
Little foreshadowing there.
Yep. So, for those who don't know, the Million Dollar Mission each week, we review Brian's 150 lineups. He is trying to recreate his $1 million victory back in February when he single-handedly took down the Super Bowl GPP for a cool $1 million. Let's see how he did last week on FanDuel. Let's see if this will work. Yeah, so for week 11, 11.79 in entry fees, and had a cool minus 86% ROI. Ooh, not good, man.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Not good. Not
Nope.
good. And as we'll look at my player exposures, it's very easy to see why. It was an all or nothing week for me,
Hmm.
and it fell on the nothing side of things.
Yep. And just for transparency's sake, for DraftKings, 2,200 entry fees, 760 on winnings, minus 65% ROI. However, you still are in the positive ROI for the year. After 3 weeks ago, you hit for 100K.
Yep.
That's pretty awesome. Getting second in the FanDuel million. That is a gnarly feat. I will say that.
Thanks. Yeah, pretty crazy this year. So February was beating 350,000 people. Beat all but one of 250,000 people a couple weeks ago. So yeah, pretty good year so far.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as I went ahead and just tweeted this out, if you guys are watching this video on YouTube, make sure you hit that like, subscribe, and bell notification so you'll be notified of when we go live or upload a new video. On Twitch, hit that follow button at the top right so you get notified of when we go live in the future. We'll be back at it again on Saturday with college football in the morning. And then in the afternoon, we'll be reviewing the NFL main slate for Sunday. So let's jump right into it. What you see here on the back screen is Fantasy Labs contest dashboard. And what this is a free resource from fantasylabs.com. You can check out player exposures, player pools, leverage, all that good stuff for past contests. Usually they have some large GPPs, and it's a great way to do some research, do some not back testing, but review, see what other players did, and we'll go from there. So let's jump right into it. While I pull your name up, was there any thoughts you had going into this slate? Did you like it? Did you not like it?
I thought I liked it early, and then we kind of, as we discussed on Saturday, some decisions were needed to be made, mostly in regards to the running back situation. We talked about Brian Hill. We talked about Miles Sanders, kind of a late value pop up, and what to do with those in your lineups. And ultimately, I decided on trying to get as much of them as possible into my lineups. So as you see, nearly 75% each of Hill and Sanders. Hill had about 3 points. Sanders had about 5 points. So, when you have 75% of your lineups with 5 points in them, and sometimes even more, likely not going to do very good. So, I'm definitely okay with the process. Hill had, I think, 18 opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Sanders was on the field for like 60 some snaps. So definitely don't hate it. I think ultimately those two guys fell in probably the furthest negative range of outcomes that they possibly could have.
Yeah, they absolutely hit that bottom basement floor. Now, I do want to ask you really quick. I don't like to do a lot of hindsight analysis, but for Brian Hill, Miles Sanders, not so much so. They weren't really as high up in the model as I think we both thought they were going to be. Um, do you think that the model was smart in predicting that they weren't not necessarily get that bad, but not reach as high values we thought at Jalen Samuels as week was?
Yeah, you're probably right because Jalen Samuels week, Jalen Samuels was the number one running back in the model.
Mm-hmm.
and that ultimately made it an easy decision. Let's go 100% Jalen Samuels.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. I didn't hashtag trust the model as much this week. I was more so game theory in it and trying to just jam these guys in because I had some expensive stacks that I wanted to play too. So it really made sense for me. But yeah, in hindsight, you're probably right.
Yeah, but that's why we play these games. Why we'll be back at it again next week doing the same thing.
Yep.
Not necessarily with that, but yeah, let's jump right into it. So, talking about some of your top leverage plays, and for those that don't know, it's that user's ownership. So what Brian had across his 150 lineups on DraftKings minus what the field had. Obviously, Miles Sanders, Brian Hill were that highly leveraged, and then some other players. Wide receiver Curtis Samuel, Minnesota defense, wide receiver John Brown. I believe Samuel and Brown were both on your underperforming wide receivers list. Was that correct?
For sure, they were. And Samuel was part of my game stacks as well, which is why he ended up, in nearly 40% of my lineups. John Brown, I used the DFS Magic Optimizer. I wanted to make sure he was in a ton of my lineups, and I set it at 25 or 30%. And maybe should have went more. I don't know. Because there was only a couple guys on that buy low list, that underperforming list last week. John Brown was very near the top, and when you looked in the model, he was like a top 5 play despite his cheaper price tag, which is pretty rare for us. So this week, on the other hand, we have like 10 guys on that list. So this week in general will be interesting. Not to look too far ahead. It'll be more reserved for our podcast and our Saturday stream, but a lot of low totals. So I think my 3x2 game stacks on DraftKings, 3x1 on FanDuel, stacking 3 games. That strategy may be a little different this week because of how shitty the slate is.
Yeah, I can agree with you on that. I can't wait to see what we decide. What the model pops up, what we talk about on Saturday. Now, you talk about your game stacks. What games did you stack this week or last week?
Yeah, so Carolina and Atlanta. And
Okay.
Atlanta turned into the 85 Bears defense, so that was great. I stacked New Orleans and Tampa Bay, and we got bad Jameis. And I also stacked Houston and Baltimore, and Houston did not show up to play. So 3 one-sided games, you're never going to get there when that happens with your stacks. So I mean, it's very easy to see how I had like negative 90% ROI. My 2 75% guys sucked, and my 3 stacks were one-sided. So pretty difficult. Although on FanDuel, I did have a shot late somehow with one random lineup. But again, that's really important to look at the context of one lineup with all 150. Like one lineup had a shot in a couple smaller tournaments and qualifiers. But if you look at my portfolio as a whole, not very impressive performance.
Yeah. And then I do like to show the flip side of things. So some of your under leveraged players, Josh Jacobs at minus 37% leverage. A couple other players within that 10 over the double digit mark. DJ Moore, Ezekiel Elliott, Mohamed Sanu. Christian McCaffrey almost made that cut. It's been getting very hard to play him at 10-5. He's that again this week. But and an expensive running back like that, I'm surprised you didn't go more on him when you basically jammed in 2 cheap running backs that could basically really make you fit McCaffrey any way you wanted.
Yeah, but the stacks I used were so expensive, it was almost impossible. So the stacks I had included Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Julio Jones.
Yeah, that's tough.
Lamar Jackson, DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson. Like you couldn't fit, multiple guys from a stack. And when none of those stacks went off, it was, the Lions were dead.
Yep. Makes sense to me. What I have up here on the other tab, just really quick as we run through it, the winner on the DraftKings lineup, NH Payne. We like to take a look at some of the top players on there. Let's take a look at him.
Yeah, shout out to him, by the way. I saw his tweet. I think you saw his tweet too, Moose. But clearly the guy has been trying for a while now.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like a pro, kind of a low stakes type guy, but has been grinding this for a while. It sounds like. Thanked a lot of people on Twitter. So obviously super happy for him. His $1 million membership card's in the mail.
Absolutely. And as always, what else comes with a I won the million maker tweet?
Tons of hate for sure. That's also
Tons of
included.
hate.
That's also included in your
I felt
membership.
like I didn't I felt so bad. As like the dude, like you said, he seemed super genuine. Was like super happy. Thanked everyone that helped him when coming up, and still, and there's people just you got lucky. You suck. Like
It's always going to happen. But see, that's what's included in your membership package. I'm on the committee now of the group who's won $1 million in tournaments before, and what we do is we send new members, new winners of the $1 million. They get a welcome package, a welcome card, greeting. They get their $1 million jacket that we wear to our meetings, our our Illuminati underground meetings. They also get a collection of hate mail, because you have to keep yourself humble. So you'll get all the hate mail that has been compiled over the last month since you won. But then we also have our meetings to discuss, okay, how do we use these new features that DraftKings only lets $1 million winners use? How do you change your lineups after lock? How do you add more than 150 lineups? It's really cool. So I'm glad that NH Payne can join us.
I mean, you know what's funny is there's gonna be a
People
handful of people.
they're gonna think that's real.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and now we're gonna get banned from Twitch.
I know.
But yeah, so looking at him, he went his highest owned guy, Miles Sanders, and then a couple spots down low, Brian Hill. So I think where he made his thing was he did the 3-person stack on Buffalo, Josh Allen, Devin Singletary, John Brown, and packed it back with Devontae Parker. That's a pretty good lineup.
So 3-by-1 stack. It was pretty good.
Yeah.
And it was a low scoring week, as you saw. I mean, not a lot of the running backs did great. Singletary only scored a handful of points and was still in the winning lineup. So
Absolutely, yeah. And just some of his, he didn't go too many leverage players. He had, let's see if I can pull it up. He had 110 players in his player pool, where you had 70. So I'm always curious to see how other players, especially 150 maxers, put the number of players in their player pool. We've seen it. What was it? Last week when we reviewed the one guy who got third, I think, Laz, who had 150 players, every quarterback, every defense. It was crazy.
I was about to say NH Payne went with the Laz gets fit strategy here.
I wouldn't say that extreme, no.
Did he play this week, by the way? Laz gets fit.
Let's look. I think he did. So if you look, Laz gets fits did 118 players. His highest owned guy was Christian McCaffrey.
Damn, that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Kyle Allen, DJ Moore. Interesting. Yeah. Again, we thought we had his strategy pinned down. Maybe we don't, with McCaffrey being 60% owned.
Who knows? But yeah. So on the tail end of things, some of the other things that we like about this contest dashboard is you have the ability to see the top duplicated lineups, which we'll show here. And again, as we always talk about, this is most likely from some form of optimizer. As you look here, 248 users put in this lineup 257 times.
Christ.
And you look, let's take a look at it. It had Brian Hill. Actually, it wasn't such a terrible lineup. Not the worst lineup, but I'm just waiting till the day when 248 people split the million and
DFS burns. DFS burns. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine like the coverage, the news coverage from mainstream outlets that would get if that happened?
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely. What I think is crazy here is the top, what is that, 5 of the most optimized lineups had Brian Hill in there. So
yeah, dude, he was a good fucking play. Yeah. God, it's so annoying.
Yeah. But again, that's why they play the game.
That is definitely why they play the game. I mean, Hill had a touchdown called back, so that obviously sucked.
Mm-hmm.
He got 5 red zone opportunities. He played 60% of the snaps and handled touches on most of those. Again, had 15 carries, had a couple targets. So, like I said, this landed on the low range of outcomes. Nothing we could do about it. We're on to the next sleep.
I do want to see really quick. There was one user who inputted the same lineup 41 times. I do want to see that really quick. See if I can find it. So sort by entries.
Suboptimal strategy.
And let's see. Yeah, so there was one guy here who, he just put in one lineup 41 times, which Yeah.
You're 41 out of 41 Kyle Allen. Not going to have a good time.
Yeah, but he did go with almost a stack. Not really. Yeah, and then the other one we like to look at here is position usage. How did players go in their flex spot, which you might not be able to see because Brian's in the way. 52% of people went running back on the flex. I guess that makes sense with two huge value running backs.
Definitely. Yeah.
36% in wide receiver, and then 12% in tight end. Which is
So tight end back to the greater than 10% mark after the $100 last week.
Yep, and we talked about that. The $100 one, a lot sharper people. Tight end was what, like 4 or 5%?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I think 5 or 7% maybe, but yes, super low.
Yep. And now again back to the normalness. $20, you have 12% of entries have that. Yep. The other one is the salary distribution. Shows what percent or what dollar amount of the salary people use in their lineups. And as you look here, how many? Ooh, that did not work out well for me. A bunch of people, stay within that $500 mark, which makes sense. We always talk about you don't need to spend more than less than $49.5. And that's one thing we like about DFS Magic. You can put in what salary you want as your limit, and it gets pretty damn close there to it. So really good optimizer on that part there.
Yeah, and just if you are watching this and you're listening and you do use DFS Magic, sometimes if you create a bunch of lineups, let's say you're making 150 for the pooch punt on FanDuel, and it'll spit it out. And if you're being picky like me, a lot of times you'll get some lineups on that first run that are that use less than 49.5. You can just discard those lineups, keep the rest, rerun the optimizer, and it'll fill it in again. And if you do it a couple times, you'll end up getting all your lineups under that mark.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. One thing we never really talk about too much. We'll be here for about 5 more minutes. I want to do this one real quick. If you have any lingering questions, go ahead and post them in the chat. But I did notice that they have this leaderboard section on Fantasy Labs, which makes it a lot easier to see the number of entries the user had. Just some exposures across the top 100 lineups, some of their average ownership. As we talk about, we want to get between that 10 to, we really want to get to that magic number of 15% is the average ownership. In between 10 and 20 is pretty good. That's where most of the top lineups, 12, 10, 10, 12, 12, randomly 6%, which has been crazy. But yeah, I thought it was hilarious the first couple of weeks. People were saying, oh, 150 max is dead. And now, that was a small sample size. Now we see consistently 150 max players winning or getting the top 10, getting it close to there.
And again, for everyone, there are way less 150 maxers than there are people entering single-digit lineups. Mm-hmm. So you would naturally expect to see way more single-digit entry lineups near the top because there are more of them. Yep. But a greater percentage of 150 maxers hit the top. It's all about base rates.
Yep. That was actually pretty neat to do. Look at the average ownership, some of the high-owned guys. Who was it? Yeah, Josh Jacobs at 43% was in the 5th spot. I saw that high ownership, which is the highest owned player that person has there. Let's see here. Yeah, so before we head out, is there any last lingering thoughts you want to talk about, Brian? You want me to pull up?
I don't think so. I'm just trying to think here. Yeah, this week was interesting because really no stack went off, and really Buffalo Miami didn't actually go off. Devontae Parker helped on the Miami side.
Yeah.
But yeah, no stack really went off. So it was a lower scoring week on both sites. All the chalk busted pretty much every position. Mm-hmm. So that's another reason we had lower. So it depends on your strategy. If you're a person who is naturally creating, contrarian lineups, you probably did pretty well in a week like this. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're trying to mix in high and low owned plays, you probably had a tough time.
Yeah.
Raise my hand. That was me this week.
Yeah, I actually did. I know no one cares about my 20 lineups. I actually went over 20 in the quarter two
Sick.
box. But again, I stacked a game that didn't do that hot.
Yeah, if you don't go over 20 sometimes, then you're not doing it right. Seriously.
Exactly.
I'm not even joking.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. So, with that being said, do you want to take us out of here, Brian?
Yeah, so for Moose, I'm Brian here at Occupy Fantasy. Be sure to follow us on Twitter. Next pieces of content coming up. Subscribe to our YouTube channel or subscribe in your favorite podcast app to get our Week 12 podcast episodes. We have 2 episodes per week. We have a DFS first look where we talk about the highest totals, projected ownership, games to stack, and of course our underperforming wide receiver list. And then we have a season-long episode as your season-long fantasy league is nearing the playoffs, how to gear you up for your playoff run. OccupyFantasy.com, Thursday, Friday, you'll see the Thursday daily plug, our write-up, the main slate write-up on Friday, the Occupy model will be up and running. And then, of course, Saturday, we'll back here on Twitch to answer your questions and preview the slate.
Cool beans. I dig that. So, again, let's get out of here and good luck, guys.